Hey everyone, welcome back. This is the WTF series on the Clarity Through Chaos YouTube channel. I'm your host, Fiona Hardwick, and joining me today is Tia Rest. She is our spiritual teacher, writer, and speaker. If you guys are new here, this channel is all about helping you transform your relationship with yourself. And if that sounds like fun to you, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, turn on the post notifications, and comment on the video below. We're going to dance.
Mommy,
We're
that's
going to eat
so
donuts. I don't
I
want to.
honestly don't realize how much I talk.
Okay, hi Tia.
Hi, Fiona.
I haven't seen your face in so long. I'm happy you're no longer concussed.
I honestly probably still am, but we're good. No, actually, what's really funny? I'm really happy I'm not either, like technically, but Cindy Ward was the one that said this to me. It's like, oh no, my sister was like, how could you be more wonky than you are?
You're like, there's always a way. Don't
There's
test me.
always a way. So yeah, thank you. I know I missed your face too, and all of our fun, random conversations that
I
we always
know. I know. I love it. So today I really wanted to talk about boundaries. The boundary setting has been something that I've been working towards and implementing and practicing and putting into motion for so long. Um, and basically, for people who don't know what a boundary is, it's setting limits. It's setting limits to the behavior that we find acceptable and unacceptable. So, this can show up in your professional life, in your personal relationships, if you're a mom with your children. So, I just kind of want to dive in and explore this topic a little bit.
Well,
So,
I'm excited because boundaries has also been something I've struggled with and have it's weird. Like I've struggled with it in some arenas, like relationship versus work versus like personal friendships.
yeah.
And in other arenas, it's like I've had very strict boundaries. So it's like been very unbalanced in how it shows up for me. So
We'll talk about that a little bit. Like, where do you find it's super easy for you to set boundaries?
honestly, a lot of times now as I've gotten older with work. So, not the work that I do personally, like one on one with my clients, but like if I'm doing like a freelance gig as an artist still, um, in general, I just have learned that just because you're a manager, that I don't need to respect you. And I know that sounds really bad, but it's not that I don't respect you. It's that if you come at me a certain way, I don't necessarily need to be like, oh, okay, when it's something that's not really good or nice or kind or valid. And I still semi struggle with it, but it's gotten more where like my impatience is like, did you just say that to me? Because that's not right, versus me being like, okay, like,
Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes it depends because I think I have always had a little bit, this sounds terrible, but I think part of the reason it's so hard for me to work for somebody, and it always was because I didn't like a lot of my leadership and management. And there were some leaders and managers where it was like, I respected their boundaries because they respected mine. Like we both had a mutual respect. Um, and I think that that's where I think sometimes, I mean, it goes back and forth, but generally, whereas like, I don't like to disappoint my closest friends. I don't like to disappoint, that's where I think I'm more like, I'll work harder. I'll try harder. Or like if I have a boss of some sort and I love them, that's still work. But because I love them or I respect them so much, I will do more, find more time, create space, like even if it makes me a little bit like stretched. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about, I think, your relationship with the person or the people.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think I agree. I think the first time that I really got clear with my boundaries was in work situations. It was like learning that no means no. And
Mm.
it's a one it's just no. It's not like no because like a whole story that went along with it. It was just learning that like period. And that was definitely easy for me when it came to work situations. But then in my personal life, the same thing. Like I tend to people please. Are you a people pleaser?
I yes and no. Again, it just depends. You gotta catch me in the moment, honestly. Some days I'm like, no. And other days I'm like, it just depends. But you're
Yeah.
Libra, which is, the shadow side sometimes of Libra is wanting to make everyone so happy that they go into people pleasing. So
Yes. Yeah, and it's also like my south node, so I'm very familiar with that energy. So I'm learning like little by little, the older I get and the more I experience, just different relationships in my life, it's like stepping more into that Aries north node of just like taking care of myself first before I try and bend over backwards for other people.
I think that's a great thing to learn because I'm a Taurus, but my rising is Aries. So
Mm,
again, like I think maybe that's what happens. Like sometimes my driver's seat is the Aries part of me, or sometimes my driver's seat is the Taurus part of me. Because Taurus is we have a fear of not being good enough. So that's where the boundaries for some of us who have this issue of like, well, if I don't do that, or if I don't show up in the way, what are they going to think? Not so much I'm trying to please them, but I just want to make sure that they know I'm enough
right. It's like
versus
a
the Aries
reflection. Yeah.
versus my Aries rising. Sometimes I'm just like, people have called me selfish, and I'm good with that. I actually love it. I'm like, yes, yes, because it shows where I'm not willing to bend. There are places where I'll bend. There are other places where I won't. And speaking of my personal boundaries, as a young little girl, I remember because it's been told back to me, and I remember the moments where I would tell like my aunts, uncles, my parents, like if you don't respect me, I don't respect you. It was very simple for me. And where my boundaries can kind of pivot a little bit more is when somebody's so like kind and like asks me in a certain way. Like I am very sensitive to how people ask or want of me.
Mm.
That's where my boundaries start to like kick in. Um, if I feel like you're not necessarily just like showing up kindly. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I don't
for
know.
sure. And I think I agree with that statement of like, I never really jived with the whole concept of just respect me because I'm the parent or the aunt or the uncle. Because, it was like, especially now that I'm a mom and I have kids, I'm like, I can't expect my kids to respect me if I'm just like a jerk all the time. Like, that's just not fair. I don't think it's fair. And there's where my Libra comes back in. I'm like, but this isn't fair.
You're like, no.
No. And I tell them that all the time. Like when they do act up or whatever, I'm like, listen, do I treat you like that? Do I scream at you? Do I yell at you? Am I throwing a tantrum? Like, I understand you're having big feelings right now, but like, we're going to have to learn how to deal with this in a different way because no.
I love that you call like their tantrums big feelings.
That's what they are. And you know what? The people who don't have that kind of discussion, you can tell when a child has not been learned how to deal with their big feelings because as an adult they still throw tantrums, they just look differently.
Oh, a lot of my, I mean, now it's not so bad because I've worked on some of my shit, but or like, oh my God, like my sister will be like, is Satan in the house? Like, what's happening? It's not- And like, Tauruses, we are known to make, molehills, mountains out of molehills, like
Yeah,
create this like what we call spinning or cycle or drama that like is so intense that like all of a sudden our whole world is ending.
yeah,
And I love what you just said because I think maybe it had something to do with how my big feelings were seen as a kid.
yeah,
um,
yeah. My big feelings, because we're both Cancer moon, so we had really big feelings.
yeah,
And we're
yeah,
both open solar plexus in human design. So, like, it wasn't even always our feelings that we were feeling. We were feeling everybody else's feelings and making them huger. And it was like, if you have a parent who can't deal with their feelings and now they're expecting to deal with your feelings, like, it's just no way.
I mean, and it's so funny. I'm like trying to think because what you're saying is so pivotal right now because I've been having a lot of big feelings lately. Not temper tantrums, but hey, they could be if you really push me that far, if you overstep my boundaries. Um, but uh I think that's interesting because it's also like you said, the response of the person with you or next to you. And I think that could agitate people more. And it's funny because some people like based on trauma response to like fight flight freeze or fawn, it's like instead of like creating the boundary they may walk away. You
Yep.
know how sometimes you fought, like I don't know if you ever had like any boyfriends or in your partnerships you're like okay, I can't handle this. So you like just get in your car and you like drive away,
Yeah.
right? Because you're trying to make a boundary, really. You're
Yeah.
trying to create a boundary, but it comes off as just drama or just
Yeah.
as like overreaction or whatever.
Right. Or it's not communicated like, hey, I need to cool down and I need to be out of your energy in order to cool down. I'll come back and we can talk about it.
Totally. And I think that's just so interesting. I wonder, and I do think it comes as like a kid. Like maybe when you have those big feelings, how do you respond? That's really interesting. I'm gonna think about that. Because I think it's been, wow, just a lot of ahas are happening, right? I'm like, what? Like, is that what's happening to me? Because I've been having a lot of big feelings lately. So I'm like, but I'm like, I don't know who I'm mad at.
Yeah, yeah, and, like, who have you been around? You know, because 'cause you're a projector, you have so many open centers, especially you, like so I think that's also important too to see, like, the pattern. Where's the pattern happening? Like, what's the emotion that's coming up kinda thing?
I think that's a really good question. I don't know. I feel just sad. I know that sounds really terrible, but like just randomly sad
Yeah.
and randomly angry and randomly like, how dare you to nobody? And like I'm talking to George, I'm like, I don't know if I blame you, but like I'll figure it out. I'm just in my feelings right now. I don't know what's happening. So I think it's so funny because like my biggest thing around boundaries though when it comes to the way that I'm feeling or somebody around me is feeling is that like I don't want anybody to ever betray themselves. And it's
Mhm.
something that when your boundaries are so blurry, you you start to feel a mess, but you also start to feel like you're betraying yourself, like you don't know what's real or not. And I think that that's where boundaries for me, like I've tried to get strong in them, but then I also have to question like where do these boundaries come from? Are they like defense mechanisms? Are they just protective things? Are they um because sometimes I think there's people I've met in my life that have way too many boundaries where like they're just cold and they lack connection. So, how do we find the balance? How do we know
Hmm.
where we can question and be like a little more flexible or where we just really need to set those strict boundaries? I think that's something I've had to battle with myself, which I'm sure everybody has.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I don't know, like, no one's coming to mind. The people that I know that have really healthy boundaries, it's like they do have a really strong sense of who they are, of what is acceptable, what's not acceptable in how people treat them and interact with them. I'm trying to think if I know anybody that I'm like, "Ooh, you just have too many." The people that I know of that are, like, very cold, it's not I don't view it as a boundary, I view it more as, like, that disconnect.
Mhm.
It's like they don't wanna be in touch with themselves at all, so therefore they aren't in touch with anybody,
That's a really good point. I would agree with that.
you know?
Sometimes though at work I've seen that in my past where it's like she's just cold or like she's just so black and white. Like I don't know how she could just be so insensitive.
Mm,
So maybe that isn't boundaries. Maybe that's really just the disconnection of the self and then in turn the people around her. So
you're
or
right,
him.
right.
So I don't know. I think a lot of times my boundaries have shown up as a how dare you.
Mm,
I was told something when I was in Sedona how many months ago? Not 6 months, 2, 3 months ago. And a friend of mine said, anger shows up when you feel like you deserve more.
yeah, I agree
And
with that.
right, because you're just like fighting for something at that point. You're so angry, you're almost like fight or flight, kind of like this aggression. Um, and I think that's where people start to kind of implement boundaries because they don't want to get to that point again where they're just so angry. Like, look, you can't do this again. Look, I can't handle that again. This is where I draw the line. I'm actually relearning all these things in some capacity in my relationship, actually,
Mhm. Yeah,
because I don't know. I think sometimes you don't know that something bothers you, and that's where you have to start to create a boundary around something
yeah.
or to create a space or format. So I don't
Or how
know.
about, like, when your needs just change? Like, sometimes you need a change and you have to implement that boundary because, like you said, you didn't realize that you needed it Or maybe you didn't need it before and now you need it.
Interesting. I've never thought of it that way either. Maybe you just like the needing part of it. I don't know. It's funny. It's like, hmm. Do you think boundaries are directly correlated to what you value?
I think boundaries are directly correlated to how you value yourself.
Mm,
I mean, I know as a very young mom, especially after I got divorced, I felt a lot of guilt. I felt so guilty because I was the one who asked for the divorce. I was the one who wasn't happy in the relationship. And I felt like because of that, I was like ruining my kid's life, you know? So the times that I had them, I split custody with my ex husband. We had 50-50 to this day. And the times that I had the boys, I was so lenient. I just was like, we're just here to have fun and hang out. Like, I didn't want to implement rules or systems or say no to anything or take time for myself because I felt like I just felt so guilty.
mm,
And what did that show about myself? Right? That I didn't trust my decision. I didn't trust my gut instinct that was telling me that this relationship wasn't healthy for me. It was showing that I didn't, value myself enough to say, "Hey, yeah, I'm going to take, my girlfriend asked me to go out to dinner tonight and I'm going to leave the kids with grandma and I'm going to go out to dinner." Like I literally for like 3 years I refused every invitation if it was on the kids' weekend because I just felt so guilty.
wow, that's so interesting. You
And you
know,
know what? It didn't serve my kids. I'll tell you that. For people who have gone through a similar thing, they were not better for it. And I had to learn that the hard way because when I started to be like, whoa, 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 like what's happening here? They were treating me the way I was allowing them to treat me, right? They're running all over me. I couldn't implement anything. I couldn't set any rules. I couldn't set any restrictions because they were just like, "Well, you don't respect yourself, so we don't respect you." They weren't saying that in those words. They were too
right.
little, but they were picking up on my energy, on how I felt about myself.
That is so interesting. Like trying, like, I like that. Boundaries are a direct correlation of how you value yourself. And when you don't value yourself, essentially you all of those like lines go out it like everything like it's blurred. That's how I feel about it. And that's
Yes.
interesting to see that with like a kid interaction or the idea with kids because I don't have kids obviously. So it's interesting because I'm like, how can I relate that to adults? Like have adults just stepped all over me or done like or made me feel like so I'm so self-sacrificing of some sort. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I'll
But
just do
it's even
everything for you.
sometimes like how people talk to you, right? What you allow people to say to you and how they may judge you or say something like they don't agree with you, so they just totally talk down to you. And it's like, that's a boundary. How you allow people to talk to you is a boundary. You're like, no, I'm sorry. You can disagree with me, but you can't talk to me like that. It's not allowed.
I love that. That's so funny because you're making me think of a work situation. I think, oh my God. And actually,
I feel like this is therapy with Fiona and Tia today.
honestly, it's like I like try to think of like I'm like shit. I'm like that was about. That's why I got so pissed. And
There
it's like
you go.
I'm like angry. Like listen, like boom.
Yeah.
I remember, and I'll tell you the story because it's a little bit entertaining. So let me just share because I think it's funny. I have been downtown at a department store in Chicago, very popular. I was an artist. I was there just to freelance and help the people that work there, like just for fun, like and to support the brand. Okay. And I had been working with this group, and I don't want to say, the people because God knows if they ever find this, right?
Hmm.
But I'm working with them and I'm working with them, and they're just bitches. Let's just be clear, okay? They are not nice people. They got daddy issues, mommy issues, all the fucking issues. And honestly, and that's all good, but if you're not healing and working on it, I have very little empathy. That's my boundary, okay?
Yeah.
But I'm never going to be rude to you. I'm never going to disrespect you. I'm definitely not going to be a bitch to you. Like I am just going to I never take those things personally because I realize like everybody's got their stuff. But what I did take personally and what was my boundary was when I came into work one day, it was a Saturday and there's like 5 people standing for the same brand. Okay. I come in, my job is to get clients in the chair, do their makeup. That's my job. That's all I'm here to do. However, because I go above and beyond and I care about my boss, I respected my boss, and I've been in very high positions before, I was like, I will support in whatever way I can. What do you need me to do? I walk in, and the first thing one of the very snarky girls on the team goes is, Tia, you're going to put the lipsticks away and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And I looked at her, I grabbed it. I was like still in shock because I was like, well, how did she talk to me? Two, that is not protocol. You never do stock on a weekend when there's customers and clients. Okay. You just don't. I take the box and I look at her and I'm like, don't talk to me like that ever. I am not doing lipsticks. I'm going to put these to the side. And I walked away and I said, I went right to the manager and I told her everything. That girl surely got reprimanded. Okay. But she had at that point so many times in little ways, like messed with my boundaries and my own self respect.
Mhm.
That day I was just like, no. And guess what, Fiona? She never bothered me again. And what she saw was, wow, I thought Tia was so nice. So let me poke at her boundaries. Let me poke at her. And, she's not going to care. She's not going to say anything because she's so friendly and fun and she doesn't like drama. Because that's really what, like, I really prefer not to be confrontational. But that day, I remember the way she looked at me and the way she looked at me every day after.
Mhm.
Don't even think about it. And it's funny because I think about that moment and I was like, I don't care what happens. You guys don't want me back at the store? You want to fire me? No, you are absolutely not going to make me feel less than.
Yeah.
So I still get upset about it when I think about it. How dare you? How dare you think that I'm like a fool? Like that's where, like, I think that's where sometimes our boundaries really do show up when we feel like that anger, that how dare you. I always call it the how dare you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I one of the very first people that I worked with after hairdressing school when I started at a salon, he was pretty successful. He ran the school that I went to, he ran a couple salons, he had a bunch of different businesses, a lot of women. So he would say, like, listen, you can complain if you have a solution. And if you have a complaint, like, have that solution and come at me with the facts. I understand, like, feelings get involved in everything, but underneath your feelings, I need to hear the facts. Like you said, okay, protocol, whatever. So I've used that a lot, especially with my work stuff, and it's bled into my personal because it's like, hey, this made me angry. I need to talk about why it made me angry, and we need to figure out how I'm not going to get angry in the future.
I mean, I honestly, honestly, and I think it's so funny because the older I get, it's like, it's hard. On one second, we're very open-hearted people. So I always like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I always like to, maybe she's having a bad day, maybe he's having a bad day, maybe whatever. I'm not going to take it personal, okay? And this happened recently, actually, with my partnership. So I'm like, okay, Tia, like, he just woke up, fine. I'm like talking to myself, right? Because I'm just like, like, that like self talk where you're like, you're not, don't get mad, you're fine. But you know what? By the end of the day, but like by the next day, I was just like, something bothered me and I can't figure out what it was. And I think it was that. It was like, it's not that he disrespected my boundaries. I just think sometimes we don't even know there are boundaries within us that exist where it's
Yeah.
like, it's not okay with me.
Yeah.
Figure it out. I don't like that. Figure it out. Like, I just,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
because it's not our responsibility to teach people. I'm sorry. It is our responsibility to know what it is that works and what doesn't work, like, what we don't like. But it's not our responsibility to hold somebody's hand to figure it out, like how they want to make the changes to interact with us. Like for myself, a personal boundary that I have with my family is like I need to exercise. I like my morning routine. I journal, I drink my tea, the baby goes down for a nap, I work out. So the two older kids, always like want a sandwich or something. I feel like last week they wanted a sandwich too when we had a call. They're always like, "Can I have a sandwich?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Kitchen's right there." I'm
Go
like,
make it for
"Yeah,
yourself.
go make it for yourself." And it was only after I had a huge explosion one day that I realized, "Oh, I forgot to set the boundary with them. I forgot to be really clear and say, 'Hey, there are times when mommy's going to work out when my headphones are in and I'm exercising, unless if there's an actual emergency like blood, a broken bone, glass broken, like something that you cannot handle on yourself, do not interrupt me.'" But it was only after I had that big explosion and yelled and this and that. And then I had to apologize because I was acting crazy. Like it was a whole thing. But that's like setting those daily, it's a simple thing, but it's something I need. And I think women especially have not been taught that their needs are valid
Mm,
or that their wants.
we have to talk about this. This whole idea of your boundaries being okay. Because
Yeah.
part of the issue, I think, is that, okay, yeah, but they didn't mean it. Yeah, but he didn't know. Yeah, she didn't, yeah, like, I
Sure.
don't
Yeah,
have,
that's those are true things.
okay, great. But I don't, like, I honestly, like, sometimes I think I'm harsh. And I think that's the idea because women have not been allowed to have like their needs. Like, this is what I need. Yes, no, I don't care. This is what I need.
Yeah.
I it's funny because I think you're absolutely right. And I don't know. My Aries rising is real strong Aries season now. I don't know what's happening, but I honestly feel like the day, like March 20th, like there was a match that was lit, and I was like,
I can
yeah,
feel it like in your energy through the screen. You're just like different.
I'm just agitated, I think. And I don't know. I like don't have any. I really don't even know what I want. I'm like, maybe it's just like symptoms of the concussion, but like I just need. I feel like I need to have like boundaries around my whole body right now. Like, just like, don't mess with me. That it's such a funny thing, but
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe that has something to do with who knows. Like, just how I think sometimes some of us snap in some way. Have you ever watched that show with like the women who like it's called like Snapped?
No?
Oh my god, this is the exact issue. Okay, women like go and like they kill their husbands, which I highly
Oh, okay, yeah.
recommend. It's not okay, obviously, or like they become violent or whatever because like and you'll hear like their interviews afterwards. It's because they've taken so much in their life, whether it's abuse, verbal, physical, whatever, and they call the show Snapped because it literally is like this woman was a great mom and a good parent and a whatever, and then all of a sudden she's in jail 5 days later and you're like, what happened? And I think it's when you've never been given permission to set those boundaries, you don't have enough self-love or self-value,
Yep.
that you dealt with something for so long that at some point you're like, F you.
You are gonna snap. Like it's all like my example of working out. Like I snapped. I was saying things that like I literally they were so mean. I didn't even mean them. I was just like I was like, "What is wrong with me? Why am
Yeah.
I acting like this?" And then I was like, "Oh, this is my fault in a way because I wasn't clear." I didn't say to them, "Hey guys." So now, like when I go to work out, I go, "Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Mom's working out. My headphones are in. Please don't disrupt me unless, whatever." And now, after however many months, they've gotten the clue and I don't need to say it every time. But it was like, how can I expect them to read my mind? That's not fair either.
It's not fair.
And it was like a thing that I didn't even realize I needed until
hmm,
it got poked and I got angry.
this is where I'm at, girl. I don't know exactly what the poke was, but I'm just like, you
And
know
okay, so here's another question.
okay.
Because this is something my sister and I talk about this all the time. And she was like, how do you know when you're setting boundaries? Like, are you being a, or are they just like people's reaction to you? because you have that sense of like, "Oh, I don't wanna hurt somebody's feelings," or, "Oh, I love my partner. I love my children. I don't want them to think that they can't come to me for help or for this or for that." But, like, where's that fine line? Like, how do you know that you're not just being mean?
I don't know, but my first impression, like, I think this is maybe because of my childhood, but my first impression is to be like, don't do that.
I know.
And it's hard because, like, oh, this is so, like, I don't even know. It's like a whole, this is therapy today because honestly, like, and I'm sure other people feel this, but like, I have never been in a serious partnership the way I've been in one now. Like I had a serious boyfriend when we were younger, but like it's different, you know. And
Yeah.
even then, like I had no boundaries. Let's just like be really clear, right?
Yeah,
And now it haunts me, I think, a little bit in my partnership where I'm like, well, he's not acting and doing exactly what I need him to do. Is he not respecting me? Like it literally goes, or am I giving in? Am I betraying myself? And am I not setting those boundaries for him to know or not to know? And so, like, and it's nothing major, but literally that is, you do, I think, pivot and go back and forth because you're like, am I crazy? Am I the one
right,
that's harsh? Or do these things just bother me and they just bother me? You know what I mean? So it's like, and you have to really like express that. And so that's, I'm so glad we're having this boundaries conversation, like literally right on time.
I'm happy to be of service, Tia.
Like the wound was like popped, and now I'm like,
I can see your mind, like, you're, like, thinking, you're like, "Wait a second."
oh my god, because I've just been feeling some kind of way, and I can't like put it like on pay. I can't. I literally am like, where's my therapist? Like, you know, I couldn't like, and it's not just like internal healing. I'm just like feeling like poked. So it's like,
Mhm.
so I mean, and this is good for people to see because like you feel a little crazy,
Yeah,
honestly, and you, because you're trying, especially if you're so self-aware. Okay, there are other people that are not very self-aware, and it's like, okay, no, you can't do that to me, bye, like, you know. And then there's other
totally.
people that like I don't want these things to bother me and like create issues in my relationship. Whereas when I would date somebody for like 3 or 4 months, right? And this is the funny thing, my friend would be like, man, like you break up with men and don't even think about it afterwards. And I don't. I really never did. Like if you had gotten me to the point of like we're breaking up in 3 months, because like, you know, that's just a preliminary period, right? It's
Yeah.
not like I'm in love with you, you're not in love with me. I was done. Like there was no going back because you had, I think what it was looking back now, which I did not understand before our conversation, is they poked my boundaries so much that I was like, no, not okay.
Mhm.
Thank you for showing up. Not okay. And
Yeah.
I moved forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um, so I,
and I think as we grow, like, your boundaries at 16 are gonna be different at 26, and they're gonna be different at 36. Like, you can't expect that you're not gonna evolve as a human. And that was something, that I learned, like, through therapy. Like, my therapist was like, "You have different stages of your life. Your career changes and evolves, like, you become a parent, like, all these your kids grow and they're in school and this and that, like, there's so many things that happen, and you have to be really clear with what you want, and if those things change, you just have to communicate them." So, like, it kind of always comes back to, are you communicating? How are you communicating? Are you being heard when you communicate? Are you guys, like, there's so many different tools on like how to get your message across cuz my mom says this all the time. When she's angry, she's like, "I communicate." I'm like, "You yell. I don't know if you communicate." She's like, "Ah, okay, well, I definitely yell." I'm like, "You definitely yell. You get it out." But I don't know if the person you're yelling at is hearing you. Like there's such a difference, you know?
that is so interesting. I have so many thoughts, Fiona.
Well, let's hear them. Come on, it's therapy time.
It's therapy time. I'm like, we should just call this whole thing like,
I'm not even gonna name the episode boundaries. It's just gonna be welcome to our therapy session.
I literally, Fiona gives Tia therapy today. For me, my, when I am trying to vocalize or communicate what I need or what I feel, a lot of times I feel like my little girl gets involved, and then my little girl gets so upset that my anxiety gets involved, and then all of a
Mhm.
sudden my anger wants to come and hang out, and all of a sudden I'm not communicating, I'm just like demanding. Like I become like, if you don't do this, I don't care what happens. This is what I need. Why aren't you listening to me? Do you have money in your 401k? Like, what?
Yeah, the triggers. You just get
Yeah,
triggered. You just
yeah.
get triggered. It happens.
And then like all of a sudden it's like, what? Like I just we're eating now. Like what? Because at that point, it's funny because years ago when I first got my self love coach, which I love so much, and she's like my mom now, but she's just like such a wonderful woman. And she always said, you know, Tia, when you feel a certain way, when somebody does something to like upset you, disrespect you, why don't you just say it in the moment?
Mm,
And I've had to practice that. And I think that's a big thing around boundaries, like because we shush ourselves so much that all of a sudden you're like, shit, why didn't I say something 10 days ago? What was I
yep.
like now? I'm like, oh, I'm pissed now. You know what I mean? So
It's just ruminating. It's boiling. It's coming to a simmer. Yeah.
and I'm like, I'm twirling that spoon. I'm like you did this, and then you make a story in your head. So
Yeah.
what I think when people do not create the boundary, and I think, and we've all done that. I'm in the middle of it now. You start to create a story. Does the person even care about me? Do they love me? Do they care about this relationship? Oh my God,
Mhm.
like, am I valued at work? Like, how dare them? What were they thinking? What do they think I'm that kind of person or whatever? Like, you go through these things because you're trying to. I really think it's you're trying to protect yourself. So you're trying to assume what was going on, and in turn, you're trying to assume. So then you're like, well, if that's the story, then I got to be ready for it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I'm. And I actually don't even know what I'm angry about. That's the worst thing. It's like because if something happened a while ago, which it could have, I, I if I didn't speak on it or set the boundary and it offended me. And here's the thing: I don't know how you are, Fiona, but I don't get easily offended usually in my life. I have a very high tolerance of what people can say or do to me. And I usually just don't take things very personally. And it's funny because my best friends will all be like, Tia, you just never take anything personally. And I really don't. And I don't know if it's just because I assume the best out of people or I just know my friends. But there's moments where I am kind of, I'm so used to not making drama that maybe there are things that do bother me that are like add up over time
Mm.
from different people too that could trigger me and when I'm not feeling so good. So I wonder if people go through that. Do you go through that?
I have tried to implement something called the 24-hour rule, where if something happens in any relationship and you get upset or angry or whatever, like you have 24 hours to talk to that person, and if you don't talk within that 24 hours you have to let it go. Like you can't bring it up 3 months later.
What kind of rule is that? It's
it's
rude.
it's really effective. It's really effective because it eliminates those little, I don't even know what to call them, but it's like those little blimps, because it does happen. Like you do get, it's like, oh, they said this. Okay, okay, they said that. Oh, that got under my skin. Oh, they said that. Oh, they got under my skin. But like you didn't speak up. I didn't speak up. So Tia, you're gonna keep saying it because I never said, Tia, that upsets me. I don't like when you say that. Right? And then, yeah, it's going to build up. And then somebody else is going to say the same thing you said. But because I never put that boundary with you and you didn't stop, now this other person is saying it. And now I'm like triple angry.
I am just, the way that I listen to you and I try to think of like scenarios because I'm like, did I ever feel that way?
Mm.
Um, yeah. I,
You know what I mean?
yes, I do.
And you're
Because I
right.
thought
Like,
for you and you.
I
Huh?
like what you said about your younger self because
Hmm.
that's really, all of these things, the times that we get angry or upset, it's usually a pattern. I'm not going to say every single time, but there's usually some kind of pattern. So, for me, something that I heard a lot when I was a child was like, you're weak. You're weak. You're sad. You're always sad. You're always crying. So I would get pissed as an adult when somebody would tell me I was weak. I was like, where? Like, I will get you, you know? And it was a trigger. It was something I had to go back and heal and say, okay, like those people, their perception of me is not true. It's not my truth. Because that's really what it is. People perceive you, and it's not your responsibility in how they perceive you, right?
Mhm.
Your
True.
only responsibility, we talked about this in other videos, your only responsibility is yourself, to yourself, being selfish, knowing who you are, knowing what you like, what you don't like, what you stand for, what you don't stand for, and what you're going to accept and not accept. So, yeah, I don't know.
This is so fascinating. I am like, I'm so deep in thought because I'm like listening and I'm like, I'm relating back. I'm like, well, did they know? Did they not? Do people really like what part of it is like your little girl overreacting? Because you're like, no, 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 we're not playing this game again, right?
Right.
I think that's sometimes where I'm like, where are you? So here's the thing. So, okay, you fail to set the boundary at
Hmm.
that moment in time, but you're still feeling sour couple days later. I'm not saying like, I mean, I usually speak up within the first whatever, but I'm very rarely bothered. So this is like new feelings sometimes for me.
Yeah.
So for those of us who like take this second because we're like, what did I just feel? Why do I feel this way? How do you at that point do you go back to the person and say, this really bothered me. Why did you do that? Or do you say, this really bothered me, and then mother your own like little girl, little boy inside of you and be like, it's fine. Like I'm taking care of this. Like what do you feel like what do you feel needs to happen for it to be at peace?
I think both of those things. I think, first of all, going in and being like, okay, why? Why is this upsetting me? Talk to your little person in there that's having this big feeling, right? And
Mm-hmm.
figure out the core of it. Why is that upsetting me? Why is it like when people are telling me weak, why is that upsetting me? Oh, because it's not true. That's why it's upsetting me because I don't feel like a weak person,
Mm-hmm.
right?
For you in that situation, it's like, yeah, I'm not weak. I'm just emotional.
Right.
Having feelings. I
I'm
love that.
having feelings. I'm having my feelings. I'm having your feelings. Like I'm having all the feelings. I have an open emotional solar plexus here. Like get off my back.
A lot of feelings.
Yeah. And then I think it's going, once you come to peace at that, now you go back to that person and you say, hey, listen, Tia, this is why it upset me. When
Mm-hmm.
I was young, this is what used to happen. So when you said that to me, it kind of brought up that anger. And I felt like it was back there. So, just having that open conversation of being vulnerable and saying, hey, this is why it made me feel this way.
I
It's
like that.
not, it's not something personal. Like, I know you weren't trying to hurt my feelings. Because most cases, people are not mean, especially the people you love. They're not really trying to hurt your feelings. And if they are, you're probably in an abusive relationship. And
You're
that's
like,
a whole other
I,
topic. Yeah. I mean, I've had people like that who intentionally will poke the burn after you tell them, like, hey, that's really hurting my feelings. And they continue to do that. And that's when you know it's time to move on. But that's a side note. So I think just having both of those things happen is really where the change can come into play.
hmm, I like it. It's funny because I because I wrote a letter of my feelings the other night.
Yes. Yeah,
I keep thinking in
exactly.
my head, is this for me? Like, like what the hell? Like it came out of nowhere. I was actually just feeling icky and I didn't know what it was. So I was like, let me just write. And it's like 1 in the morning, okay?
Yep.
And all of a sudden it was a letter to someone.
Hmm.
And I'm what? I was not. I'm like, where did this come from? In my head, I'm like, I've not been like, what? I'm like, okay, I guess this is how I feel. And then I'm like, but is this for me or do I give it to them? And I did end up giving it to them. And I'm like, you need to respond. Like, figure it out. I don't care how you call me, you text me, you write me an email, a letter. I don't care. Just respond the way that you feel good about it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny because I struggled for a moment of like, that boundary overstep, which I don't even know if it was a boundary. I think it's so funny because as relationships evolve, friendships, romantic, whatever, um, it does, like, you do change and you do shift and they trigger you in a different way. And then, like, a part of me is like, I'm so used to, like, 3 months, you showed me all of who you are. I don't like it. Bye. Right. Versus actually not wanting to, like, leave a relationship or a friendship and, like, resolve it. But still, I have that triggering wound of, like, do I just need to go? Like, do
That
I just,
is, Tia, that's really funny you say that. For a couple things come to mind when you're saying that. Number one, all of our relationships are kind of here to trigger us. Triggering us, like when you get triggered, that's how you evolve and grow.
true.
Don't run away from your triggers. Dive in there, see what it's about. Number two, you have an open spleen. So, for people who know HD, one of the shadows of, or the not self theme, I should say, not shadow, the not self theme of an open spleen is knowing when it's appropriate to let go,
Mhm, mhm,
you know? And sometimes, like people with an open spleen, they don't really feel safe. So they'll latch on to things, people, situations that will make them feel safe and then just kind of have a hard time. I see it with my oldest son. He has an open spleen and he was always like just wants to be near me because I'm defined. So he's like, "Oh, you're my safety," you know? And even like he tends to get like a little rage mode when he plays video games and, you know, he's like he knows it's unhealthy for him to continuously play whatever game it is, but he can't stop playing it. You know, it's like this really, you know, you see it in different ways. So that's really interesting that you say that.
well, it's funny because I'm usually, it's so funny. So my best friend is like, when I've given her this anxiety in the past, because I struggle with OCD and I struggle with getting into my head and trying to solve and fix. And I have a defined mind in HD, which the shadow side is to obsess, which is all makes sense. And
Mhm.
it's funny because when I think about the boundaries and what I need in my life, right? What I value, all those things. It's funny. She's like, you need to trust yourself. Like, when you're over a relationship, like you always knew, like, she's like, it was like almost sociopathic. She's like, it was just like, she's like, she's like, it was
It's
just
so
like,
true.
like it was
Yes.
just, and that's where it's so funny. Cause even now where I'm in my relationship with my partner, it's like, I really love him. I really want to be with him. It's not so much I necessarily even feel safe with him or I'm holding on to him. It's more so that I am realizing there's so many triggers that have been brought up the last 6 months. And I'm in such a transitionary part of my life right now that I'm like, I don't want to walk away like I used to, where it was just, and if I could, and I don't regret any of the walking away that I did, but I'm saying like, there are certain relationships that like help heal you and grow you and evolve you, right? And just because you feel a certain way or whatever, it doesn't mean you throw away the relationship. You handle the feelings. And in other situations, other scenarios where you feel disrespected, the reason I would walk away was because I always felt like the biggest boundaries that I have with myself. And I think that people need to name, like, what is it? What is your boundary? Like, you can't yell at me. That's one of the biggest boundaries that I even set in my current relationship when we first started dating, because it was such a boundary to me.
Mhm.
And there are other things where it's like, okay, we can work on this because I know that it was unintentional or whatever. How do people know which boundaries are the big ones and which ones are the little ones? You know,
Yeah.
like the big
Yeah.
ones, like some people can handle this and some people can't. Some people can handle that and some people can't. Like, it's funny when I see those ex-boyfriends that I used to date for 3 months and I'm like I see them with her new girlfriend and I'm thinking to myself, man, do they know how bad your temper is? Like, but then I think maybe that's not their boundary. Maybe they can handle it. Maybe that isn't necessarily so important that they're so deeply respected to the point where like yelling isn't appropriate, let's just say, right?
Yeah.
So I always just wonder, like, I think boundaries look so different for so many people.
They really do. That's a really good point. And I think the only way to know is like to trust yourself,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
Like if we're bringing it back to HD, it's your strategy and your authority. Like when something like that happens, like when you get yelled at, how does your body feel? You know? It's like it's a hell no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Are
I'm
you?
the same way. I'm not gonna yell at you. You don't yell at me. Like I yeah, I get really triggered by
You're
yelling.
physically feel it as like a hell no in your body.
Mhm.
See,
'Cause you're a mental projector, so you're a little different.
I am. So it's funny that we're talking about this because man, did I set a boundary once with my ex that made him cry. But anyway, I literally was like, I remember just, you know how it hits me is as a self-projected projector where like it just all up here. I literally I go straight from my core and I just speak the truth, which so many times is painful for other people because it is. I have gate 10, which is like the self love gate, and I very much have it. And I've worked on it for all these years. And I remember we're in the car, and this was after the fifth time he yelled at me. 3 months dating over something not like nothing, like very, just very bizarre. And I looked at him, Fiona, and I'll never forget it because I didn't even know it was going to come out of my mouth. And that's how self-projected works.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, do you see that guy over there? He's like, yeah. I'm like, do you see that guy over there? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what about that one over there? He's like, yeah. I'm like, I can have any guy I want. And it's this close to me having what I want. And he broke into tears. And I broke up with him. So anyway, I just was like, enough. And then you know what? Later, I'm like feeling bad because I'm like, oh, did I hurt him? Oh, did I this? Or, you know, no, I fucking created the boundary. Like,
Yeah,
stop.
and
No.
sometimes that's the thing, like, you can't really second guess yourself because you knew in that moment.
Oh,
And when you know. And that's a whole thing. It's like coming back to like women being able to state what they need or state what they want. It's like you don't have to have a reason. You don't have to have a reason why someone can't yell at you.
just
You
can't.
just don't. I don't have to have a reason of why I want to work out. I just don't. Period. It's just a period. I don't have to have a reason of why I say no. I'm not going to this. Sorry.
I
I'm
know.
like
It's
that with showers, okay? Like bridal showers, baby showers. I hate them.
tell me why. This is so
They're just
funny.
boring.
Tell me
I'm just bored.
why.
You're so you want me to sit in a room with people I either don't know or whatever, eat some food, and watch you open presents? Ugh, boring.
Oh my God. I see. I'm the same. That's so funny. So
But
I'm
here's
like,
the thing. But I'll go to them. Like I really, really care about you if I'm at your shower. But most of the time, like my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law, they know me so well. They'll be like, "Oh, so and so shower's coming up. We'll put your name on the card. We'll let you know how much you owe. We're figuring you're not going to go." I'm like, "Thanks, guys." But it's just like I don't have to have a like there has doesn't have to be a reason, you know. I do have a shower this weekend. It's for my cousin. It'll be fine. I'm gonna drink wine, and now I don't really get out much, so I'm kind of looking forward to it. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I'm not. I don't even like them for myself. Like I was so happy when my baby shower got canceled because of COVID. Is that terrible?
you're so funny. So the boundary you need to set was I'm not having a baby shower. Thank you so much. Third one's a charm. I'm good. Like
Well,
that
I was like, "We'll do it," but I was very like I was like, "We're gonna have dancing." Like I'm not opening presents. Like I wrote in the invitation, "Do not wrap your gift. I'm not gonna open them. Like they'll just be on a table unwrapped. We're gonna dance.
love you.
We're gonna
That's
eat
so
donuts. I don't want a cake. I just want some donuts." And my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I mean, it was so cute. Like they really put it together. They everything I wanted, they put together. But even when I got married, like I had a Jack and Jill, I didn't have a shower. I had a DJ, we just ate and we danced.
what's a Jack and Jill?
It's like um it's kind of like a stag, but
What's a
it's with the bride and the groom and you sell tickets and people come and, then they eat and there's raffles and all that stuff.
what?
It
I've
was so much
never.
we had a blast. It was so much
That
fun.
sounds like
There was
so
like
much fun.
200 people that came. Like we had Albanian music, English music. We just danced. It was barbecue, so like there was so much food. That's great. We had so much fun. And then we had a raffle, so people like donated gifts and prizes and people would like buy raffle tickets and then at the end we did this thing where there was like a pie. We were going to do a pie in the face and there were 2 jars, so, like, you put in money for whoever you wanted to get pied, and at first, my
Well,
jar had more money than John's jar, and thank God for our best man. They weren't gonna pie me because I had my makeup done, like, this was not an option. I had extensions in, like, it wasn't gonna happen, but it was really fun because we ended up, like, raising money after, and everybody was, like, drinking, and we were just, like, having fun, so then the boys got to pie John, and they were really excited about that.
it's like I need. So when I have mine, I need to ask you all these.
It was a you will love it, it's such a party.
I need a party. Like I am just all about the fun and the celebration, and that's why I do like bridal showers because it's something to do. But I don't actually like the shot. Like I don't like what happens. Like it's not like what I would want either. Like I was just at my cousin's. Like I love my cousin. I know the people, but like everybody was just like, "There's nothing. You're not doing anything." And it's
Yeah,
like there's no dancing. There's no like
yeah.
you know. And like you're watching these people open these gifts, and I'm helping her like unwrap them so then she can show them and be like, "Thank you for sending me the." And I'm just like, what is this? Like, I feel like we're in like the ancient ages. And I know it's tradition, so like it's fine, but like in my head, I'm like, ew. And who needs so much shit?
I know, and I'm just so non-traditional. That's really the crux of it, is, like, I don't do anything traditionally, so, like, it is what it is, I don't know. I think, like, my mother-in-law's just used to it. And she's just like, "Okay, this is how Fiona is, so we just know that she's not gonna do things how what the tradition is, so she just like, whatever."
I am actually so I like love what you guys did. Like that sounds like so much fun. Like, and that's what I want. Like, I want a big celebration of like things. Now, but the rest, like where I struggle is the idea that it has to be like this way or like, oh, now you got to give them money and do all of this. And it's like, it just seems so like,
Archaic.
it's weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know how we got on this track, but I just really
Me
want to,
neither.
I really wanted to hear about like, what is that? Like I am Greek in Chicago. We don't do those things, but I honestly would. Like if I had seen them, I
They're
never
so much fun. I mean, ours was fun. I don't know if everybody's is fun, but I just like to party, so, like and to me, a good party is good food and good music. I don't give a and drinks, like, that's
had
it. I don't really care about anything else, like, even our wedding. I don't care. I kind of hate it. I guess I don't hate weddings. I hated planning my wedding, but I feel like there's some stuff I need to deal with on that. But anyways, but like the actual wedding, I danced so much that like the whole rest of the week and a half we were in Mexico, we couldn't dance at all. Like my hips, like I was an old lady. We danced so like there wasn't one we had our slow song that we danced to and then party the whole time. We had a tequila line, like we went down, we got down.
that is like what I want. Like I, I'm gonna have you plan my wedding. I know you like
I'm
planning.
not doing it, but yeah, sure, I'll point you in the direction. Wait, my best friend is getting married and she's planning to get married in Jamaica and I was like, "All right, great." I was like, "I'm not going to be a bridesmaid." I was like, "I love you. Okay, you're my best friend. I'm not going to be a bridesmaid, but I'll help with whatever you need help with." And she was like, "Okay, great." So she was talking about setting up and they're doing a destination like we did and she was like, "Oh, actually they allow you to set up, the room because I was like, for our wedding, they didn't allow that. You just brought the stuff and they did it for you." And I was like, "Yeah, but you don't want to do that." She goes, "Well, I'm not going to do it. You're going to do it." I was like, "No, nope." I was like,
Not
"Just tell me how much it is. I'll write a check. It's fine." She was like, "You're crazy." I was like, "Girl, do you remember before getting ready for my wedding, we just sat in the pool all day until it was time to take a shower. Like that's how you get married."
I actually that's
Running
like a
around.
boundary. I think that's a great boundary. Man, that's really good for me to think about because I'm always invited to participate in wedding stuff and I'm happy to do it. Like I love all that. But there's moments where I just like don't want to be in like I don't care. Like it sounds terrible, but like I want to celebrate with them. I just don't
Yep.
all of the things, all of the rules, all of the whatever. You're just like, this is just
Why?
but like like I in my head, so I think about it, I'm like, this is all for show. A lot of times, especially in like Chicago, like where weddings are like an average of $60,000, and that's just like the cheap side for our family. Like that's
Yeah.
just like oh, that's the norm. It's like
It's
what?
like a
Like
cultural thing too, because
it
Albanians
is.
are the same way. And I was like, I only had my sister as my bridesmaid, and it was only because my husband's like, "No, my best friend has to be my best man." And I was like, "Oh, okay, fine, I'll ask my sister." And I was literally like, "Please just make a speech. I'll do the rest." Like I didn't, no, I didn't like it.
well,
It's just a lot. It's too much.
I
Why?
I want all my people, you know me with my line four. And
I
I'm just like
know.
so, celebrating is fun for me. It's just I don't want it to necessarily be dogmatic. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a part of the traditionalism that's like it was so funny because if you get married in the Greek Orthodox Church, like one of the churches here, I guess, doesn't allow you to do the vows. And I'm like, they can't take 5 minutes out of the ceremony and just let you say like some nice words to each other. Like in my head, like that's so dogmatic. It's not like it's just specific to that, I think, church itself.
Yeah.
Like some are different than others, but I'm like, what? Like your husband's American. He has no idea what Aramaic is. And lost in the whole ceremony. And he can't even say what he wants to say to you. I'm like, not okay. Like
Yeah.
boundary. Like no. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
go to a different church. She's like, well, I'm like, oh yeah, well, you know what? It's like the only important day of your life. Like, I mean, not the only, like one of the biggest things you've been looking forward to. Like I just met, my cousin. And so I'm just like, and she's like, it's fine. I'm like, okay, if it's fine for you, like that's the thing. It's like it has to. You have to like. That's where I think people also get confused because sometimes you can see your friends having certain boundaries, like things that bother them that you're like, that would never bother me. Like I don't
Right.
care at all. And I have one of my girlfriends, she's very like demanding in a lot of ways of like everyone around her. And I wonder if that's like, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know if you're just born that way or if it's something that you've built as a protection or defense, like where you just need to make sure people are operating on like in your world and how you want things. One of my friends is like that. And, I'm used to it. So I'm fine with it. But I even sometimes feel bad because I say no to her a lot. I'm like, no.
Do you think that she's like a little controlling?
She's not controlling. She just gets really upset when things don't go exactly the way that she needs them to go. Like she just gets upset. Like she gets angry with
You don't
people.
think that's controlling?
She doesn't try and control us though. Like she's just like the
But she
business
is she controlling the situation?
the situation, yes. Like she just is very like, this is how we do things. This is how it gets done. I don't understand like blah blah. And a part of me is wondering, is that where she needs healing? Because or is that just who she is? Like I always go back and forth on that because sometimes like how do you know if that's just who you are and you're stubbornly that way? There's no fixing, no changing. Versus would you be happier if you did work on like why you feel so
Well,
out of
to me, like that does sound like a controlling behavior, and that comes from a place of fear, right? If I don't control how this is going to play out, then I can't control the outcome.
true?
And if I don't know the outcome, that's scary. I mean, I'm speaking from like I'm a control freak in recovery, so I'm speaking from experience where I would like get so triggered by like my husband because I would be like, "Oh, switch a laundry," and he would do it his own way when I was like, "No, that's not how you do it. You do it this way." And he was like, "Why does it matter? It's literally the same thing." And I would get so out of my mind angry. And then
What
I was like, but wait a second. It actually doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day, you're helping me and I'm trying to control how you help me.
do you so can I tell you what I've learned about, which could be like our next conversation or
Uh-huh.
even we could like talk about it? Codependency.
Oh,
So
girl.
I have okay, so
All day.
okay. So I have one definition of codependency, okay? And then the other day my friend calls me and she's like, I decided to sign up and be part of a codependency group.
Hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah, it's like a Alcoholics Anonymous for codependence kind of thing.
literally, I'm
Yeah.
like,
Oh, I've
what?
heard of them. Yep.
I'm like, you're not even in a relationship. What codependency?
Well, what's funny? Yeah, it's that a lot of people. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
tell me, because I was like, what? Go ahead.
Well, it shows up in all relationships, not just romantic relationships. And now you're doing
I
with your children and your friends and whatever. And it's like you really just don't have a sense of self. Like your only happiness is if somebody else is happy, or you're only like, if somebody else is upset, you're upset. Like you don't there's no difference between like yourself and the other person.
there's really no boundaries, what you're saying to me.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I had no idea that this was like codependency. I've always thought of it as an addictive pattern between a couple. Like that's the only spectrum I've seen it as. Okay, so
Mm,
like with
mhm.
my clients and stuff. So um, when she told me this, I realized that because you're talking about this controlling element, like why didn't my husband fold the laundry the way that I wanted to? And I'm like, excuse me, I've never given a shit about these things. Okay, now I noticed, I'm like, am I having codependent behavior when I'm starting to demand things like my friend like should be done a certain way? Is that boundaries or is that really codependency? Because codependency is usually also you're trying to manipulate and control another person so that you feel more secure or more like they're doing things like you something is triggering you so much. So in turn you're like, well, do this, do that, so I feel better, instead of you just kind of taking control of yourself and saying, I'm responsible for how I feel. What they're doing or not doing is, especially if it's like nothing major, it's not really affecting me, but somehow it's affecting me now, has nothing to do with them. It's really just me.
Yeah.
I am learning all the things these days because everybody, let me tell you, everybody's like fucked up these days. Everybody needs a therapist. Every like
Yeah,
I've seen more people.
absolutely.
I
Especially,
mean,
I think, especially like both of us, like we have parents who are immigrants, and I think there's a lot of codependency within that I'm learning. It's just that idea of like you're not allowed to really be your own person, you
oh,
know? When you have parents who are immigrants, it's like, "But I did this for you and I did that for you and you do this for me because I gave birth to you." And you're like, "But that's not what I want to do." And they're like, "Who cares about your wants?"
I yes, I mean my parents are pretty more easygoing, but there's always that undertone of like, well, why aren't you
It's the
doing this?
undertone.
You can't. And I'm like, I know it would make you feel better,
Yeah.
but I'm good. So what is the stress here?
Right, and
But
it's out of love, and that's kind of the hard part with it is like, they love you so much, so they want these things for you, but there's like a whole other thing that happens when you don't allow someone to just be themselves, you know?
100, it's literally 1,000%. It's funny, I realized like my family, if I think back to that, like it was always in nudges. Like my dad, why don't you get your PhD? And it's like I think because he always wanted to get his PhD or
Right.
like would have loved to die. You know what I mean? I'm like, I could do that. And I would like go back and forth. And I'm like,
Mm,
I want to. So
mhm.
I mean, if I found something I loved, I would do it. But
Right, right.
that
Or it's
doesn't
even
feel
like I feel like it shows up in relationships too, or, like a parent-child, like, "Oh, I love you more than anything. You make me so happy." Well, why am I making you happy? That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid. I mean, you should
it.
make yourself happy, and your kids should be making themselves happy, and we can all coexist happily together.
That is so true. And then like how do it's like growing to like so I'm struggling because I'm in a very serious relationship personally, and I find it's like, don't you suppose aren't you supposed to go from I to we, which I have already had like a hard time because like I'm selfish.
But here's the thing, Tia. Why? Why does it have to go from I to we? Like, is
Because
that what you actually want?
no, I'm good. Like I like my life. Like I love George. I just want to be with him. I don't want to be. I feel like okay, we've been dating almost 3 years. The thing is, and I think I need to set some damn boundaries with people around me. I need them to stop fucking asking me when we're getting married, when this is happening, like because I
You should
have to
tell them no, this is not what you should tell them. I have a habit of provoking because, like, the immediate thought in my mind is like, every time you ask me, I'm going to prolong it by another year. So go ahead, ask me again. That's, but that's not healthy.
no, but I like it.
I know, but it's not healthy, and I do it a lot. So I'm really like noticing when I do it because I'm like, yeah, tell them this, and then I'm like, oh, I'm so rude, like and mean, and I need to. That's not like appropriate. So don't do
Keep
that.
rising. It's fine.
No, it
It's
just
like
comes out.
it's okay. It's a good thing. It's kind of like you setting a boundary. Actually, it's not the nicest way, but you're just like, stop telling me the same thing, right? You're
I
like, stop
know.
talking the same thing. That's what you're trying to say.
It
Stop asking.
is. It
Let
is, but there is better ways to go about it, so it's more clear. Because now it just looks like I'm being a bitch. It's not like actually setting a boundary where you're saying like, "Hey, it's my relationship, it's personal, and it doesn't really have anything to do with you. So, if it really bothers you, I'm sorry that it bothers you, but it's really not my responsibility to fix it for you." Boom. Done.
100%. It's so funny because, and that's where I'm like, I don't know. And I feel like, and then what happens is, I think if you don't set the boundaries around things, like, especially somebody who I have so many open centers in my human design, I start to be like, shit, are we supposed to be doing that? How long have we been dating? 2.5 years. Okay, 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 okay. George, why are we getting married?
Well, it's so funny, Tia, and you said it before, you know yourself. You know, you have defined ajna, defined head, like you know exactly what you want. It's feeling safe to know whether or not you can state what you actually want. I
Mm-hmm.
notice that a lot. And bringing it back to childhood, like my daughter's like that. Her head and she's 10 months old, right? But
Bless
I'll
her.
tell you, she knows what she wants. And now she learned to point, so she just like points. And she knows. No, yes, like and it's funny to see the people around her because they'll be like, no, 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 you want this. And she pushes their hand away and is like, no, she knows exactly what she wants. And it's conditioned out of us. And I think for you, you know exactly what you want, but you fall into the trap of listening to other people.
I think that's really true because and it's like funny because I'm just like, you know, you see other people progressing in life a certain way. And I just don't know if I see myself doing this traditional progression. I so struggle with it. And I wonder if it's because of I never experienced a marriage before. I've never experienced having to like, consult with somebody else. Like these things, foreign things to me. Like what? I don't know what it is, but I'm like, Tia wants to do her favorite thing. And I know that that sounds almost like immature, but my favorite thing is like living my life on my terms. And I don't know, you're married already. You have 3 kids already. What if I do want, to have a partner and have a child? At some point, how do you know where you can bend your own personal boundaries or what you need to have? I mean, is that just in timing? Like your needs change, your wants change, I mean, you had your kids young, but like was this just a matter of like, okay, like I'm ready to have kids, so there my boundary has changed now, where I don't need to necessarily just focus on myself or whatever it is.
I think that's a really good question, and I think it's gonna be different for everyone. For myself, yeah, I was super young. Did I want to be that young when I had kids? No, I didn't. Did I change my mind because I was persuaded to? Probably, yeah. I probably wouldn't have had my kids as young if my husband didn't want kids so desperately. I wouldn't change it for the world. I adore my children. And when you have children, there's so much healing that happens. And I really credit having my kids and experiencing that to the woman that I am right here, right now. But I also think all of these things, uh, the linear progression of life and what it's supposed to look like, it's all just like, who made it up?
I honestly want to know because I got a conversation I'm going to have with them.
That's what I mean. Like we live our life comparing ourselves to like some really outdated things that like really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Like who says that you have to be married and have to have a child like in order to have a child? Who says that you have to be married and live together? Who says that you have to be
I
in a
know.
relationship for all this time and get married? Like who's making up these rules?
I don't know. I think it's such a weird thing. Like, who did? Because I realize how many of us operate under these random things. And actually, being with George has really made me realize like what I admire about him most is that he's a Greek guy. Like, he's 47. So he grew up in a generation even before both of us,
Mhm.
where that was the norm.
Mhm.
Everybody was getting married, having kids. It wasn't just one or everyone was getting divorced. It was the norm.
Yeah.
And he always says to me, is like, my path is not determined by what other people are doing. And I really admire him because he could have gone under a lot of peer pressure. Like he could have, like very easily. And he's like, all my friends, the ones that got married, except for a couple, are divorced. And he's like,
Mhm.
I just never wanted to marry the wrong person just because somebody told me I needed to do that. He's like, and listen, sometimes you look back on life, woulda, coulda, shoulda. He's like, but now I don't like he doesn't have any regrets. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
it
because he lived life on his own terms. The times you have regrets are when you did things on somebody else's terms. for somebody else's wish or somebody else's, value. Like you have to be really clear on what it is that you want out of your life. It doesn't have to look like my life or, anybody else's life.
So true. And that I think is like the biggest boundary, right?
Mhm.
It's like what, like overall, like all of that. And I've gotten better about it myself, but it's just like such a weird age because I'm like 30. And so
Yeah.
everybody's either getting engaged, pregnant, married, something or the other. And I'm like, all these parties like look like so much fun. Do I want to get married or do I just want to go to the parties? Like, do I
Just throw
post
a party. Like just I used to just throw parties like for fun. Like there doesn't have to be an event. Just throw the freaking party. Who cares?
well, all my birthdays except for my 30th because of quarantine were a big party. Like I always have a celebration. Like there's
Yeah.
never a time where I don't have this like fun celebration. But I think you're right. But it's funny because I love love. That's the other part of it. Like where is my boundary? And it's funny because my self love coach was like my second mom, and I was like, you just have to figure out what your goals are. And I'm like, I don't know when it comes to my own personal life and personal boundaries around my personal life. Like I'm open to that. Like I'm
But
open
that's
to
okay. You don't have to know.
okay.
Like, you don't have to know right this second, is what
Right.
I mean. Like, I'm not saying don't have goals. Like, everybody's going to be different and goals are going to show up however they show up. But even if you decide something this year, that doesn't mean next year it can't change.
That's true. I think that's really good. I think that's great. The idea of being able to change your own needs and your own boundaries in general, I think is good because I think we get stuck on like having to know. It's like when you're going away to college and like, what's your major? And I'm like,
Ugh,
how do
that's a
people?
whole other subject.
I look back on that. I'm just saying, like, I look back on that, and like when people ask you these like big questions, right? They are forcing your boundaries. That's what they're
Yeah.
doing. They're trying to get out of you what they think they need you to know for yourself, even if you don't feel you need to know for yourself. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
No, it's really true. And I think it all comes back to like taking the time to really get to know yourself.
mhm, mhm.
Getting to know what it is you like, what you want, what you don't like. That's where it's going to start. Because until you know yourself, you can't decipher what is a boundary or what isn't a boundary, what you like and what you don't like. If you are constantly people pleasing and doing things for the other people. I have so many people in my life that I've known who are like, this is a famous one. I'm happy if my husband and my kids are happy. That's my
Mm,
happiness. Talk about codependency.
I honestly, you saying that, like, I am disgusted. Like,
See, your body is giving you a physical cue that that is not correct for you. But it's
life is
so
bad.
many people, so many women live like that and it's just like time out. But who cares about you? Like, do you automatically assume that your family's going to care about your wants and needs and your happiness? Because they're not.
You know,
They love you, but they're not. Like,
like, here's the thing. Like, and I feel bad. Like, I see a lot of people I know. Like, yes, their whole life is based on what everybody around them is like feeling, basically.
yeah.
But that's so that like to me, feel like so scary. Like that, I actually fear that. I fear that I will get stuck having to give more of a shit about everybody else and myself. No, I want to care about just myself. I know, and I don't know if this is just anything I'm gonna outgrow. Like, everyone's like,
Well,
everyone's
here's the thing. Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, you're so funny because you're 30. So much is going to be changing, just like even astrologically. Your north node, your midheaven, like those things don't even start to come into play until after you're 30. So yeah, you're going to be having some big shifts. Your south node's in Leo.
yeah, I know. And I feel like, but see, it's so funny because you know how they say your south node is what carries you through your life? It's towards your north node, right? So
Yes.
you don't forget your south node. It has nothing
No.
to do with forgetting it. It has more to do with like just like embracing it and what it's meant to do for your north node, right?
Yes.
And on Saturday when I had my workshops,
Yes. It's
dude,
perfect.
dude, I mean, I was, you couldn't have given me anything more. Like I was great.
Yeah.
Like, and the money didn't matter to me. Like there was just nothing about it that like It was nothing external. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it
Yes.
wasn't because, like, oh my God, this is a great gig and yeah, I'm getting paid. It was literally like I felt like I was finally going into my North Node using my South Node.
Yes.
So, and I felt alive. And then somebody can ask me about, like, are you and George gonna get married? Do you guys think you're gonna move to Morton Grove, which is like a suburb here in Chicago? Or what about like Glenview? And I just like, oh, stop talking to me. Like, I don't want that. Like, I don't want that. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I know that, like, I don't want that. I'm so sorry. And it's like, I feel
But why
disrespect
are you apologizing?
because I just think that's what people do in my culture, in our culture. And, and I think that's what they expect. And it's like, I have no, I'm okay with saying no and being like, that's not for me. But it's just not. And like, it's funny because even having to tell George that, like, I don't want to disappoint him, but I've told him, I was like, babe, like, I know we're supposed to move in together. And I know that, like, on one hand, I tell George, I want you to make these efforts towards us. And I was listening to this interview, Fiona. Um, Oprah was being interviewed, and she was like, everybody asks me why Stedman and I never got married. And at one point in 1999, I asked him to propose to me. Like, I was like, let's get married. Like, she was just feeling it in that moment, right? He proposes to her. And in that moment, she didn't want to get married. She
She's
just
yeah.
she just wanted to be proposed to. Like, she
Did she
just
keep the ring?
I no, like, she just said no, it's wrong time because she had a book tour coming up. So she was just like, no, 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 wrong time. I've got something coming up. Like, like literally, like, I'm not even joking. Like, and I was just like,
Well, listen, she's a generator.
oh, she's yeah, 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 she is
So
absolutely.
she is like such a good example of a generator who's really living in their authority and practicing their strategy and authority because she always says like if it doesn't feel good, it's a no. And that's a part of like kind of our whole theme of what we talk about all the time is like following your desires, following your heart, following your gut. Like you know what you want, but you constantly think you should be doing something and it's like, why? Why? Your body, you know. You just have to follow that. And like setting those boundaries really helps you stay on that path of what it is that you actually know or don't know.
I know, and it's crazy because I had this dream the other night, and I was, I went to my friend's house who just had a baby. She's so cute. I was holding her. I love her. She's like a manifester baby for real, like true manifester child. And holding her that night, I go to bed and I dream of myself hugging a baby, and my whole heart opened up. Like, I'm
Mhm.
talking, like, I was so happy, okay, about this baby. But I go to hug the baby, and I could feel her spine was crooked. Something was wrong with the baby, or I thought there was in my dream, but I was so in love, right? And yesterday, and which is weird for me, you know how I am with like it's enough that I remember that dream because I'm like, what? It's a child. Like, I'm not a baby's baby. Like, I'm not like a goo goo gaga person. And then, I mean, they're cute, but I don't ever like,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm on Facebook looking at people's posts, and I see this like baby who passed away like about a year and a half ago. This girl I know, when the baby was born, she had like an extra chromosome and couldn't survive. And so I started crying over this baby picture. And I don't know, I think there's some shifts that are happening within me, but about like opening up my heart chakra because I know I need to go get some work done, and I'm waiting to do that with my acupuncturist. But it's so funny because I just want to experience love, and I don't want rules around it. I just don't. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like rules. I don't think it's funny because I was going to do like a video on like love is not logical. Like, there
Mm-hmm.
is nothing logical about love. And I think we try to put it in these systems and these packages of some sort. And I don't fucking get it. And it's so bizarre to me. And just want to live the way that I want to live.
Yeah.
And I need that to be okay. And I with everyone, because I don't want to live with any form of constraints or boundaries that I didn't make myself.
Well, I think that's kind of the transition from the old paradigm to the new paradigm. I think this new wave of thinking is just like, get rid of the labels. Why does everything have to be labeled? I personally, like, I can kind of see when my kids get older, like, I could just see it's love is love. Like, there's not gonna be like, "Oh, are you gay? Are you straight? Oh, do you like white people? Do you like black people?" Like, it's just they're just lovers. Like, it's just gonna be like whatever, like a free for all. It's
It's
just
not
what
lover.
I kinda like see happening. Like, I don't know why. I've just always felt that. And who knows if it's gonna be true or not. But it's that old paradigm of like, oh, everything needs like all these structures and rules. And it's like, who cares?
I just have never. And like now that I'm at the age to think about it, I'm like, but I just love love. Like when I used to say, oh, I would love to get married and have babies young. That was when I was younger, right? Whew. I think back to like, what kid was that? I was just seeing the movies and I saw how
Yeah.
much love there was. And
Yeah.
I was in love with the love. Like I love watching movies where there's a ton of kids running around the house and they're all friends and they're playing, whatever, because what I'm seeing is love. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And that's where I think it's so funny getting to know like yourself in so many different ways and why you feel the way you do. Like it's been such a weird thing, especially having to be like you have to think about these things a lot when you're in a relationship. When you're single, like or just I don't know, I never had to be so really I had to look at myself that deeply, which is the
Yeah.
purpose of, these
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm just like I really like myself and I don't want to change for anyone.
And you shouldn't. And that's your boundary. We've come full circle.
I don't know how much of this we have to put in the thing, but what's up? Because we've been together for 2 hours.
No.
It's
Really?
2:55 my time. It's 3:55 your time.
And we started at what? 2:15?
1:15 my time. So yeah, so almost
Oh,
almost 2 hours, an hour 45.
all right. That's fine.
Okay.
I told you boundaries is like a heavy one because they are just so it just it goes into so many areas of your life and it's really something that I've been examining lately because it just wasn't something that was normal growing up. I don't think. Like it was viewed as like bad if you had a boundary or if you were selfish and you were not allowing certain things, and that's something that I've really been overcoming is like for me it was the people pleaser. Just always being like, okay, yes, sure, even if it's not really what I wanted. So as I've been getting older and more secure within myself, it's like that's what I've been learning.
I feel you. And I think it's so funny because I think I was the opposite growing up. I think when I was younger, I had such intense boundaries. I was so selfish. And it's funny because they say Aries rising children are so highly independent and like get out of their way.
Mm,
That's how I feel.
hmm.
And um and it's funny because when I was younger, I didn't apologize for it. I think as I've gotten older, it's like I've also shifted a lot energetically. Like I am more in tune with my heart space. I don't feel like I'm always having to be strict around things. When I was younger, it was like I love my parents, but they always try to control because they're two Scorpios, right? Like they want to keep me safe. It was always the safety. And like I would just be like, no, I'm going away to school. No, I'm going to that trip. No, I'm not like, no. Like they're like, you cannot hold me here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think we have that opposite where um I think my parents had to learn because I was so intense. Like, okay, she said a boundary. Like I think they literally would just like they would try to fight me and then they couldn't. And it's funny because my sister was always like, you always fight for what you want. And this is before I knew astrology. I was young, and I'm like, there is no other way.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Mine is definitely the opposite, where I came in like this gentle little Libra, and now as I'm older, I'm just like my Scorpio comes out, and my parents are like, "We don't remember her being this intense." I'm like, "It's always been here. I just never let it out?"
you just never let yourself like speak up. Like it's just so
Hmm.
interesting. Like um I don't think there's a wrong way to doing it. I think in general, like my issue is when people have zero boundaries and those people very well when they're always sad or they're always just like questioning themselves. They have no clarity in their lives. They don't know who they are. Like they don't. And I've been in those moments. We've all been there, like in moments. But when they generally are like that, I definitely feel it's like they've given up on who they are and they have no boundaries. And those are the
Hmm.
people I really try to like push upwards, um, out of their own stuff.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah. And I
no, my
think go
yeah.
ahead.
No, and my self love coach always talks about it as like strength and clarity. It's like, do
Mhm.
you have the strength to be who you are, and like how clear do you feel?
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah. And I
So
think a great starting point is looking at those moments that trigger us. Why are you angry? Why are you sad? Why are you, feeling a certain way? And how are you going to get clear on what it is that you need from whatever person and what you need from yourself?
yeah, this was such a good conversation because I'm realizing like it's okay there are certain things that I need.
Yep. And on that note, I think this is a wrap.
I think it's a wrap. Oh my gosh, so much.
I know. I'm like, what do I even cut? I might just keep it. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm open. I mean, I've only like talked in tangents the whole time, but
That's fine. That's how we are.
no, I
It's
know
who we are.
it is.
It's our boundary.
It's our
Take it
the
or leave it, people.
lack of, or which that's our boundary. Take it or leave it. Like you want to watch and have fun, but I think it's so important. We did touch on like so much stuff.
I know. I know.
Wow,
All right.
I love it. You're the best. Okay, we'll see
You
you
are.
guys next time.
Yes. Bye, friends.
Bye.